Greetings everyone. So here we are on the 5th day of our PMP6 exam prep, step by step. So let's have a look what we have in store today. Today, we will be covering Agile Practice. Now, in the PMBOK guide, if you have looked at, you will not find Agile as a separate chapter, but there is a booklet that comes along with the main PMBOK guide on Agile. And we are taking this session today only on Agile because this will give us an understanding on what it looks like when we apply these to different processes. As I have mentioned before, in the 6th edition, the processes, when we discuss, there is an emphasis on Agile. And very often you'll come across what does it imply from an Agile perspective. Now, when we are saying that we'll be talking about Agile, we have to remember that it can be a discussion of many days, many hours, but we are not doing a very lengthy session. Instead, we are taking a 1-hour session in a condensed form. Having said that, if you want to have more in-depth look, you can go into the Agile book that comes along with the PMBOK guide. So let's have a look at what we mean and by Agile and what it is all about. The first question comes in, so why Agile and why now? Now, if you have looked at projects being managed, or you have managed, or you have read about projects being managed, Agile approaches and methodology have been used before, even without what we say as Agile, in different forms, in parts. Now, more and more, we are seeing that Agile is becoming the mainstream methodology when we run a project. Now, why is that? There are several things that has come about which pushes Agile in the forefront when we manage a project. One is the disruptive project environment. Today, on account of rapid advancement in technology, we find that there is a disruption in the project environment because there are so much of changes that keeps on coming, and there is a trend of rapid changes in a project. It's not only from the technology, from the business perspective, everything is changing so rapidly, and these are the scenarios where Agile does its best. And at the same time, there is an increasing need to focus on customer experience. So what we mean by that? Today, we cannot just go and tell the customer, hey, okay, you have given us the requirement, we'll come and see you after 6 months or after 1 year with what you need. Customer wants to be engaged, and there are different channels of engagement available. And not only that, customer wants quick delivery of value. And this is where Agile comes in the picture, so that we can not only handle the changes, but we can deliver quick value to the customers as we run the project. Now, let's have a look at an introduction to Agile and how it came about, what it means, what are the different possibilities. It can be best explained by this simple line, which is a spectrum, I would say, from definable to uncertainty. Now, when we say this spectrum, what we're saying, what at one end, there can be projects which are definable. We know the requirements, we know exactly what is going to happen, there is not going to be any changes. And on the other hand, it's uncertain. There can be a lot of changes, not only technical, but business. There can be risks, things might change as we go along. So, and in between the spectrum, you will find different projects. You can put any project in somewhere along this line. Now let's take an example. When we talk about definable, maybe you have a project where you just need to upgrade your current payroll system. You just need to upgrade your payroll system with a new database version. In other words, you know exactly what the payroll system is doing because this is being used and all the requirements is defined. There is no ambiguity over there. And the other thing is the version upgrade in terms of technology, that also is available. There is nothing uncertain over there. So there is a very little uncertainty over there, and it is definable. On the other hand, you might be doing a project about a market that is trying to penetrate, or a product trying to penetrate a new market. There is complete uncertainty. You don't know what is going to happen. And as you move along, there will be a learning involved, and this learning will have to be used as you develop that project, make the project a success. So where there is uncertainty, we don't know many things, and there are risks involved. So that is the other spectrum, on the other side of the spectrum. And when we see this spectrum, what comes about is, on the definable side of the spectrum, it is those projects, or basically that life cycle that we have been doing all along, predictive, waterfall methodology will be best suited. On the other hand, where it is uncertain, there can be changes, this is where Agile comes in. Now, another learning point here is that it is not necessary that all projects have to go Agile. It depends on what is the requirement, what is the property of the project, and then we will be able to know if it fits or where does it fit into the predictive or Agile spectrum. So let's look at it a little more in detail. Now, when we talk about Agile, one thing we need to remember is that Agile is really a mindset shift. You will often find that many of the companies, they try to go Agile, they don't succeed well. They don't succeed well because they don't realize that it is essentially a mindset shift. Unless we understand that, we will try to do Agile with our predictive baggage, with a predictive mindset or waterfall mindset. That's when it becomes a recipe for failure. So the way Agile Manifesto was drawn, and actually this Agile Manifesto came about from the software development. Having said that, this Agile is now recognized to be effective in many different fields. It's not limited to this Agile approach, Agile methodology is not limited to software development anymore, but it has been applied to many, many other fields, starting from education to product development and so on and so forth. Now, Agile Manifesto starts with 4 values. Now, when we see these values, we'll realize why we are saying that this is a mindset shift. Now, from these 4 values, 12 principles are developed. Again, we'll talk about these 12 principles. And these principles give rise to the practices, again, we'll talk about. So let's look at the 4 values. And let's look at these 4 values and see and we'll come to the realization why there is a mindset shift. First value is, in Agile, we give more importance to individuals and interactions over process and tools. What does this mean? In our predictive methodology, it is the process, it is the tools that is most important. It has to be driven by that, and individuals and interactions is not given as much importance as the process and tools. We think that if we have a sound process, we have a sound tool, everything is going to go well. But in Agile, we say, well, we do understand that process and tools are important, but individuals who make up the team, individuals who interact, the kind of interaction that we do, that is more important when we come to Agile. Then the next shift or next value is, what we're saying is, working software is put more value over comprehensive documentation. Yes, documentation is important, we agree, but then ability to provide working software at frequent intervals is more important than having a documentation. So working software is more important. It is the final proof, and that is where we put more value. Then we have this value which is customer collaboration over contract negotiation. What do we mean by that? In a traditional approach, in a predictive approach, what really happens is, you draw a contract, some form of contract between the provider and the receiver, and any discussion, any disagreement that comes about, we first look at the contract and say, hey, this is what is written over here. But when we go into Agile, we understand the contract is important, but the collaboration between us, between the provider and the receiver, is more important than the actual contract negotiation. And finally, in Agile, the fourth value is responding to change is more important than following a plan. Yes, we understand we have to have a plan, we have to follow a plan, that is important. But if a change comes about, we would respect that when we'll respond to that, because we understand that change, when a change has come, as we are developing the project, executing the project, that has a business value, and we would respect and respond to that. If we have to make change to the plan after that, well, be it, we'll do that. So these are the 4 core values in Agile Manifesto. This manifesto gives rise to 12 principles. Now, this 12 principle, one is, we're saying that we will strive to satisfy our customers through early and continuous delivery. So you see that what it really means, our approach will be providing continuous delivery of value to our customer. We will welcome change, even if it comes late in the game, because As we have said in the value, change, responding to change comes over following the plan. We will deliver working software frequently because this working software, when we deliver that, that is what gives value to our customers. We'll work daily with business. Basically saying that the project team and the business will work on a daily basis, there will be constant engagement. This agile can be successful only when the team is motivated. So the project has to be built around a motivated team. Face-to-face conversation is the way to go when we are conversing within the team as well as when the team is talking to the business. That is the key, that is the way we would like to go when we are doing agile, taking an agile approach. Working software is the measure of progress. Well, there might be plan, there may be a project plan, there might be status report, that's fine. But then, final measure of progress is the working software. Something that we can show and give, that will give value to the customer. In Agile, again, the idea is to promote sustainable development. In other words, the whole environment will be built where the team, the business, the stakeholders, everyone can work together on a sustainable basis for a long, long time. It is not a short-term environment that we are talking about. In Agile, to be successful, there has to be continuous attention to excellence. Then we are talking about simplicity. Simplicity is key to Agile, and that is going to make the Agile approach successful. The team has to be self-organizing. In other words, it has to be self-contained and it should be able to deliver the product. So that's why we will see later on, we talk about cross-functional team and different resources, different skills come together and they can manage themselves. It's a self-organizing team. And then there will be regular team reflection. At regular intervals, the team, the Agile team, will reflect what has happened, what can be improved, and then take that learning forward in the next cycle. So these are the 12 principles of Agile Manifesto that has been drawn upon the 4 values that we talked about. Now, practices. When we talk about Agile, we hear different terms. We hear lean, we hear Kanban, we hear Agile, and different other terms. So let's see how they all fit together. It all started with lean thinking. Lean thinking would talk about focus on values. There should be no waste, respect for individuals, and that is what started the whole approach. And this lean thinking has given rise to Agile and what we call Kanban. Now the difference between Kanban and Agile is Kanban is less prescriptive. In other words, it doesn't constrain and it can be easily adopted. Whereas agile, when we talk about agile practices, they are more prescriptive, they're more detailed, and some of the practices might work in your project, some might not, or you might even have to adjust. So when we talk about agile practices, there are different methodologies that has come up: extreme programming, Crystal, Scrum, Scrumban, and so on and so forth. And Kanban, whereas, is an approach, it is less prescriptive, it is more a guide that you can take and adapt to in your organization without being too constrained by a detailed practice. Now, when we go about adopting Agile, there are different adoption practice strategies. So think about, you go into an organization, you want to start a project, and you want to start a project, Agile project, using Agile methodology. Now, this organization, they have not done any Agile projects. So there are two ways you can look at it. It can be done. One is adopt a formal Agile approach. What it really means, you pick up an Agile practice or methodology, have the documentation available, educate the members, and right from day one, go Agile all the way. Very formal approach. If required, you'll provide training, and then you go all in all through the Agile path. Take the project through the Agile road. Alternatively, what you can see is you look at the project and you just don't force Agile totally. Instead, see what part of the project fits into the Agile scenario. Maybe use those parts and leave the rest the way it is in the current methodology. So you are implementing changes bit by bit and in a way that it fits the project context. In essence, when you adopt Agile in an organization, one thing you to remember that we should not adopt Agile for Agile's sake. We should see where the value is coming from. And that is the key thing when we are adopting Agile. And it is known, or it has been found, that when we don't realize that, that's when Agile doesn't give value. There has been a lot of frustration in adoption of Agile, and that's primarily because it has not been recognized, or it has not been adopted well. And in some cases, it has been adopted, Agile has been adopted just for Agile's sake. So in other words, what you're saying is, the end goal is not to be Agile for its own sake, but rather to deliver as a continuous flow of value to customers and achieve better business outcomes. That's really the goal. Now, in some cases, if we can provide better value through the predictive methodology, well, why not? We'll go with that. We don't have to go Agile. And we'll now see what kind of scenario suits what kind of life cycle. Let's go and have a look. Now, when we look at projects, one of the things that we would want to look at is the kind of uncertainty that exists, the risks that projects carries, and what it really means to us in terms of the life cycle that we should adopt. Now, if we look at degree of uncertainty of requirements, how much uncertainty there is in terms of requirements that we have that for the project, and the technical degree of uncertainty. Let's say we have these two axes. And if we see this corner, where a project has low uncertainty in terms of requirements and low uncertainty in terms of technicality, what it really means is it's a simple project. We can call it a simple project, because from that perspective, because the project risk is less, as a result of which we are calling it simple, and it is project risk is less because there is low uncertainty both from the requirement standpoint or the technical standpoint. On the other hand, if the requirements uncertainty is of a high degree and technical uncertainty is also of a high degree, this is what is a chaos zone. These kind of projects are very risky. And in between, where we have cases where, let's say, relatively high degree of requirements uncertainty and low degree of technical uncertainty, or high degree of technical uncertainty and low degree of requirements uncertainty, this is the zone what we say complex or complicated projects. Now, when we see this, what does this really mean to us? Does it give us some idea about what kind of life cycle we should adopt? It does, in some sense. What we're saying is, if it is simple, then probably linear approaches will work well. Like predictive methodology, waterfall methodology, these are linear approaches. If we have complicated or complex, this is when adaptive approaches will serve us best. And then finally, when it is chaos, these are fundamentally risky projects. Adaptive methodology might make it more predictable, but there is still that it is very, this uncertainty is very high, and there will still be a lot of risk even with adaptive approach. Now, with this background, let's step in and see what are the different life cycle and how we can go ahead and select what life cycle would best suit for our project. Now, life cycles, there are different life cycles we'll discuss. One is, as we said, predictive life cycle. A predictive life cycle is what we know as, sometimes we call it waterfall methodology. This is what is known as execution in a single sequential pass, or in other words, we draw the requirements and then we do the development, or execute the projects, and we deliver it in just one sequential pass. As opposed to that, there is what is called iterative life cycle. Now, iterative life cycle, what happens is, we have the requirements and then we will go through an iteration based on the requirements, so that we, through each iteration, will improve what we are planning to deliver in the project. Because through each iteration, we take feedback, and with each feedback and each iteration, we improve the product, and then finally we'll deliver the product. Idea here, the idea of iteration is to improve the product. Whereas incremental life cycle is, what we do is we try to give the value to the customer, to the user as early as possible. So we deliver in increments, and we deliver usable deliverables in increments to our customers. So they can start getting the value out of it as early as possible. And then finally, the agile life cycle is where we not only give early values, but each of these early deliverables as well, we go through an iteration so that we can take the feedback to improve that product. So agile life cycle is where it is both iterative and incremental with frequent deliverables. Now let's look at an example to understand this picture better. Now let's say this travel company wants us to build this website, Kayak. Maybe you have used it. So this company, Kayak, wants us to build this website. And as you can see, there are different modules over there given by different menu, as you see on the top: flights, hotels, cars, packages, restaurants, deals, and so on. And within each menu item, there will be different features and functionality and so on. Now, if we take a predictive lifecycle approach, what we are going to do is we are going to the users, we'll say, okay, we get that. Okay, give me the requirements for the flights, give me the requirements for the hotel module, give me the requirements for the car module, all the modules, and then we'll put together, we talk, we thrash out, we get into details, put together, get a signature, and then we start our work. We go and do the design, and then we'll develop it, and then finally, when we are ready, we deliver it to the customer. So we go through a single pass. As opposed to that, if we go through an iterative, what we are going to do is, remember, in iterative, we go through iteration to improve the product. So we take a requirement, and when we take a requirement, maybe we'll do different prototypes to show them what we understood by what they mentioned in the flights or hotels or cars or packages. And they look at our prototype, they make changes, and then we again do that, and then we go and develop. So the idea here is not about speed, but it is about providing them a high quality product. And then when we go through different iteration, we are pretty much confident that we are doing the way our users wanted. We deliver the product to them, test and deliver them. So you see, the difference between predictive and iteration is, iteration provides us a space or a mechanism to improve as we are doing things. Now, if we go into incremental, what did we say? In incremental, we are providing incremental deliverables. So what we are going to do is, we talk to them and they said yes. Then in incremental, what we'll do is, we'll say, we'll take the first one, flights. This flights, so flights, we'll take this requirement from them, and maybe we'll not even talk about the other modules, and we just go and build that, and we provide this, and there will be probably just a flight menu over there with flight features, and we hand it over to the users, and users start using it. They start getting the value out of it. Then we move to the next one, which is the hotel. We go through that and we discuss the requirements, we develop, and we hand the hotel. Then we go to the car, the next module packages, restaurants, deals, and so on. So that was the incremental where we took each of them, went through the whole thing, handed the deliverables over to and then we move to the next one. So here, the idea is to provide speed of deliverables. And then in Agile, it is really a combination of both. So what happens in Agile is, we take the flights module, and then we look at requirements, we maybe show a prototype, we go a couple of iterations, when we are happy, we do the flights and we hand it over to the user. Then we move to the hotels, again we go through iteration, and we are happy, we develop and give it to the user, and so on and so forth. So these are really the distinction between these 4 types of life cycle. Now let's look at a little more on the characteristics of this life cycle. Now, when we talked about predictive, we said the requirements is fixed. You remember? We said we'll put together requirements, detailed requirements, and then we'll do activities once for the entire project, and there is a single deliverable. Idea here is to manage cost. And when you're predictive, you'll find people are very averse to change, because the idea is we have to capture the requirements thoroughly, and there is not a lot of room for change, because if there are changes, the cost will go out of bound and there is an averse to change. Whereas when we do iterative life cycle, we accept the requirements are dynamic. And there will be activities, if you see, activities, it will be repeated until it is correct, because we're going through iteration. Having said that, there is a single delivery, just like in predictive, and the goal here is correctness of solution, and that's what we do through iteration. Whereas in incremental, again, requirements is dynamic, and we perform once for each increment. So basically, we are going in small increments. We are delivering them in small deliveries. The goal of the incremental life cycle is speed of delivery. And then finally, when we talk about Agile, it is dynamic. It has a characteristic of iterative in sense that it is each of the deliverable we pick up, it is repeated until correct, because we go through iteration, and then we deliver in multiple smaller deliverables. Idea is to provide value to the customer, because not only we are aiming for correctness of solution, we are also aiming for speed here. Now, when we look at this, let's take a different picture to understand where all these different life cycle fits in. If we take a picture on the y-axis, we take frequency of delivery, and on the x-axis is degree of change. What we'll find is, if there is a low degree of change, we don't expect a lot of change, and we are providing just one deliverable, right? Then it is really a predictive life cycle, right? On the other hand, if we have a high degree of change, because there is a high degree of change, and so we will go through iteration to ensure that we are getting the correct solution, but we are providing only a single delivery, just like in predictive, then it is really an iterative life cycle. If we have many deliverables, but there is not a lot of change we expect, and we can do it in one pass, just like in predictive, then it is an incremental life cycle. As opposed to that, if it is high, frequency of delivery is high, many deliverables will provide. At the same time, there is a change, and so we go through iteration for each deliverables. That is when we call it an agile. Now, this is the different life cycles, how it fits into this picture. Having said that, when you get a project, it might fit somewhere along this line, and this is what we say continuum. And it will fit somewhere here, and it's not necessarily it will go into one corner, and it might fit in anywhere in the continuum of this project life cycle. And so you have to figure out as a project manager where or what type of life cycle you should really adopt for your project. Now a little more on each of this life cycle. Predictive life cycle, like we said, the plan drives the work, meaning we know there are not a lot of change, we understand the requirements, we have everything in place, and then we plan. We plan for time, plan for cost, and we don't expect that to change. So the plan that we make really drives the work. As a result, we are not encouraging a lot of changes in the predictive life cycle, because that's not what we expect. And there is a lot of detailed upfront planning that needs to be performed for a predictive life cycle, because we say we know that and we want to be certain. We don't expect a lot of changes. So the flow will be something like this. We will have the requirement, we'll analyze, we'll design, then we'll build, we'll test, and we'll deliver. It is a sequential pass. As opposed to this, let's look at what would an iterative life cycle look like. Iterative life cycle, as you say, initial plan may be modified as a result of output from iterations, because we are saying through iteration, we will try to make the solution better and better. So the initial plan, of course, will have, but with each iteration, that might change. And as we go through each iteration, the product is going to improve because we are going to get feedback from our users. It is optimized for learning rather than speed of delivery. In fact, in iterative life cycle, it slows down, as you can understand, because we are going through multiple iterations to give a good solution, correct solution. So it is not tuned to, or the goal is not speed of delivery, rather it is optimized for learning, and through learning, we are providing an improved product. So how does it look? Let's have a look in terms of flow. We analyze, and then we design. We'll analyze the design. So in this process, what we're going to do is we'll probably do a prototype, and then we do a prototype based on the design, and then we get a feedback, and then we correct that and do again, repeat that till you are happy. Then when we go into build and test, again, what we'll do is we'll build and we'll pass it on, test, and show the results. The user will give feedback. Again, we make the changes and take the loop till we are happy with what we are providing. And then finally, we'll deliver. But we are making one deliverable, just like in predictive. In case of incremental, what we intend to do is we want to deliver successive subsets. Why? Because we know that customer can start using it, can start getting the value out of each of the subsets. And that's why we design the incremental life cycle so that we are able to deliver successive subsets. It is optimized for speed of delivery. Speed of delivery because we are delivery of value, because we are providing delivery incrementally and the user can start using as soon as we are delivering them. Customer, of course, expects frequent deliverables because they can start using. There's no point giving them frequent deliverables if they are not able to use that. This makes sense only when customer can start getting the value out of frequent deliverables. So the way it will look like is you analyze, design, build, test, deliver. We'll take one part, just like we talked about the flight, and we'll do all this and we deliver. Then you move to the next increment. Next deliverable, you do the same thing, you deliver. You go to the next one, you do the same thing and deliver, and so on and so forth. Agile lifecycle, on the other hand, we saw that it provides the iteration as well as the deliverable. So, in other words, it also takes small pieces and deliver that to the customer, and of course accepts changes. In other words, it will go through iteration. Now, in Agile lifecycle, there are two types of Agile approach we can talk about here. One is iteration-based Agile approach, and one is flow-based Agile approach. Let's look at each of them. The iteration-based Agile approach, what happens is, it is time-boxed. Basically, we pick up the features that we want to provide in this particular time slot, and then we do the requirements, analyze, design, build, test. Then we move to the next one, and next set of features, and then we keep on doing till we are done. So what happens is, iterations are time boxes of equal durations. So it is based on the features that you pick up for each of the time boxes, and then we move through those iterations one by one. And each iteration is designed to deliver completed features, of course, because we are providing deliverables so that they can use it. Flow-based, in other words, is based on work in progress. So what happens is, there is a backlog, and from the backlog, in other words, are where all the stories are, all the features that needs to be provided are, and it is constantly updated. And what will happen is, here in flow-based, based on the resources available, some of the features will be taken, and then it will go through that iteration till it is delivered. And as a result, what we'll find is, they are not on the same time. The time interval is different, unlike in the iteration-based Agile. So work is driven by features in backlog, and backlog will have the stories or features that is required to be delivered, and it gets constantly updated. And from where features are picked up, or stories are picked up and taken forward in providing that deliverable. The amount of time differs and depends on the features in a task force. So depends on what features you take, it will the time will depend on that. Now, we have talked about all this before, but more often than not, what you'll find is, you may not be able to apply any of them in entirety. And that's where hybrid life cycle comes in. So oftentimes what happens is projects will combine some of this life cycle to suit the project, suit the organization. And when it does, they can, so what we are really saying is we are not bound to be taking just one of them all the time. We can make it, combine them to suit our purpose. And when we do that, they are called hybrid life cycle. Now, there are different types of hybrid life cycle. One can be agile followed by predictive. For example, you are probably doing a project that requires a lot of change, maybe a lot of research goes in, and so you have taken an agile approach during development. But after you have developed, the rollout, the implementation part is very straightforward, and so that part you have kept as predictive. So it's a case where agile is followed by predictive. Another case might be where you're doing both simultaneously. Let's say you are using many of the agile practices, like stand-ups, like backlog, and so on. But some others, like estimation and planning, you are still keeping it like predictive. So it is neither predictive nor agile. You're doing both at the same time. It is a combined approach. And another is maybe it's primarily predictive, but there is some amount of agile, which is what you're saying, predominantly predictive. Let's say, for example, we talked about the payroll system that you are upgrading. Now, in this whole upgrade, you know everything, and so you have adopted predictive, but there is one component you want to use which you don't know is a new component, and there is a lot of uncertainty there. That particular piece, one particular module that you're adding, new module that you're adding, you might want to have that as an agile, because you know there is an uncertainty, you know there can be changes. But rest of the project, the whole big project that you're upgrading is predictive. So it is a case where it is predominantly predictive. Similarly, they can be predominantly agile. So there are different types of hybrid life cycles. Now let's look a bit on implementing agile. What it takes to implement an agile. First and foremost, as we have said before, agile is a different mindset. So when we are implementing, we'll start with an agile mindset. And when we do that, we need to ask a few questions. We need to ask, how can the project team act in an agile manner? If they're doing something before, will that, how to change that? What changes should come in the project team so that they act in an agile manner? What can the team deliver quickly and obtain early feedback? Because that is the crux of agile approach. We deliver as quickly as possible, and we take continuous feedback. And that is something that we need here. Then we want a transparent team, a team that acts in a transparent manner. How can the team act in a transparent manner? Because if the team doesn't act in a transparent manner, it will not be successful in an agile environment, because agile is about collaboration. Agile is about working together. And that cannot happen unless the team acts in a transparent manner. Now, what work can be avoided in order to focus on hybrid? So we have to continuously look at prioritizing items, and that is something that has to be done when we are taking an agile approach. And finally, how can a servant leadership approach benefit the achievement of the team goals? So when is a servant leadership? It is leadership through service to the team. Now, If you remember, when we talked about different leadership style, we talked about servant leadership style as well. But we'll talk about it more, what it really means to be a servant leader. And so the leadership behind this agile approach is the servant leadership. And we want to ask ourselves, how can the servant leadership approach help the team goal? Now, when we talk about servant leadership or leading by servicing the team, this is not really something new, but it is recognized to be effective in the agile environment. And because you'll find in many areas, you might have come across some leaders who takes that approach, who enables the team, make sure the team succeeds, and does everything to make sure the team succeeds, and doesn't do by controlling the team, but making the team, by empowering the team or making the team more powerful, so that they can do things on their own. It becomes a self-organizing, self-managed team. So servant leadership in effect facilitates rather than manages. They are not saying that, oh, you go do this or you do that. They put things or develop the environment, facilitate in such a way that the team comes together and do everything that needs to be done on their own as a self-organized team. Servant leadership remove organizational impediments. So basically, a servant leader is looking at different ways that the team can be successful without him or her telling the team, hey, this is how you need to be. So in a way, they will try to remove any impediments, any obstruction that come in that the team faces in achieving their goals. For example, if there is a huge process that they have to unnecessary documentation that needs to be done for some finance, let's say, to do some work. So the servant leader will talk to the finance and say, hey, this doesn't make sense. And we need to be more efficient. So why don't we relook at what documentation we're talking about? Or for example, if the team is providing every 2 weeks deliverables, but the business is not able to use it, or they don't have resources to actually start absorbing that, then servant leader will go and talk to the business, or if required, escalate it and make sure that the flow is smooth. So servant leader will come in to remove any kind of organizational impediments. Servant leader will pay for others' contributions. So basically, we look at how best the team can contribute. If they need something, if something is stopping them, if maybe even if they need some training or whatever it is. And finally, servant leader, its title doesn't matter to them, servant leader. It is how successfully they are able to facilitate the team. And you can call them anything, but this is how the servant leader behaves. It's not the title that is important to them. It is what the team has achieved and what goal the team has achieved. That's what the servant leader is interested in. Now, agile teams, there are some attributes of an agile team. First of all, the team members are dedicated people. They should be 100% dedicated to that project. There cannot be any ambiguity over their so that they are doing, half time here and half time there and all that. Because it needs increased focus and productivity, it will provide them. And at the same time, the team team size is small, it cannot be too large. And it is typically fewer than 9, probably 3 to 9 members. Then another attribute is cross-functional team members. The project team, the agile team, is typically cross-functional. They have different skills so that the team in itself can deliver the final working product. So typically, if you look at software, there might be designer, then developer, tester, implementer. All of them will form in the team, and and this particular team is self-organized and have all the skills required to provide the final product. So they'll develop and deliver often, deliver finished value as an independent team. Only when they're cross-functional team, they'll be able to do that. And they can integrate all work activities to deliver finished products. Essentially, the cross-functional team will be able to deliver the finished product. And they will also get feedback from outside, and within the team, they'll have feedback, they'll reflect so that they can improve going forward. And then the other thing is, it is co-location. Ideally, agile team should be located in the same place. They should be in close proximity. They should work together because they need to interact a whole lot and all the time. And that will provide for better communication, improved team dynamics, knowledge sharing, and reduced cost of learning. So that and we also call it type metrics. They are housed in the same place, so they can constantly interact with each other. Nowadays, sometimes it might not be possible because you might want to have in an agile environment someone maybe sitting in some other country, for example, or some other location. In such a case, you would like to deploy technology, take the help of technology to make it happen. Maybe you have a 24/7 video conference facility so that you can continuously interact with the other person as the project is going on, so that you don't feel that person is not in the same room. So, and in such a case, they will be able to commit to working with each other when they are in the same room in close proximity. And the other thing, of course, is a mixed team of generalists and specialists. Meaning, when you have a specialist, let's say, specialist will provide dedicated expertise, deep expertise in one particular field. Well, generalist provides flexibility so they can do many different tasks. So this is really and so you have to have in the team all sorts of people from different, we said cross-functional, but again, you'll have to have a specialist, you have to have generalists, but a lot of times, what we have in Agile team is, what we say is a team of generalizing specialists. Now, see that term, generalizing specialists. In other words, what we're saying is, this person will have deep expertise in one area probably, but will have adequate knowledge in other areas as well. So they can converse, they can help, they can work together in other areas, but they will have their own specialization area where they have deep expertise. So these are kind of, experts are called generalizing specialists in the agile scenario. And of course, agile team, we look for a stable work environment where each member can depend on each other and agreed upon approach to work, and it provides simplified team cost applications, right? And it provides preservation and expansion of intellectual capital, because if it is not stable, there is a lot of turnover, people move, then the intellectual capital goes out of the team, you have to rebuild it again, and so on and so forth. And finally, let's talk about some of the roles. There are three key roles in the agile approach. One is the cross-functional team member. We talked about a team member, self-contained, self-organizing, and they are the team member, and that will cross-functional team member. And we said specialist, generalist, or generalizing specialist. These team members is the core on the agile team, or is one of the core role, of course. Then we have product owner. Product owner is a person who have a good understanding, good grasp on the product that is going to be built. And they act on behalf of the business or the final user. It is not necessary they know everything, but if they will be the conduit to all the different users, all the different groups for whom this is being built, this project is being built, or project deliverables are provided. And they will be the conduit, they have the expertise, they have the connection to all the product, all the business and sponsors who will be the final beneficiary of the project. And then we have the team facilitator. Team facilitator is the servant leader we talked about, who will ensure smooth running of the project. You can call the person project manager, scrum manager, team facilitator, but this is the other who will ensure smooth running of the project. Now there are some common practices in Agile. One is called retrospective, which is at frequent intervals, the team will come together, reflect what needs to be done, or what has been going on well, what is not, and take that learning forward to improve the way they have been doing things. Then there is a backlog preparation. Backlog is where you put all the story or the features, and all this being kept on added to this backlog, and for an iteration, some of those features or stories will be taken, or a story will be taken from the backlog and taken to the next iteration, and so on and so forth. Backlog refinement, the product owner who understands or who communicates with the business will be refining the product. As the project moves, as there is more learning in the project, and there is more understanding what exactly needs to be done, the product owner will keep on refining the product. There is a daily stand-up, which is no longer than 15 minutes. Basically, it is not a project status meeting. It is more about what has gone well, what needs to be done next, and so on. The team will meet together every day for not more than 15 minutes. So that keeps the communication flowing. And finally, demonstration reviews. There will be continuous periodic demonstration of working product, so the user can see, user can provide feedback, and user can get the value. And then finally, all the plannings will be done in small chunks. So you take a small chunk, plan, deliver, you take the learning, and then plan for the next chunk, and so on and so forth. So these are some of the key practices in Agile. So with this, we've finished this particular module, Agile, and we'll start with each of the knowledge area from tomorrow, which is we'll start first with the project integration management. Thank you. Thank you for being with me, and I'll see you tomorrow.